Everything documented in this case occurred within the same 6-hour window. From 6 p.m. to midnight on Christmas Eve. No emergency services were contacted. No signs of forced entry were reported. And yet, after midnight, several homes were never occupied again. This recording was not discovered because something went wrong. It was discovered because nothing happened after it ended. The label reads, December 24th. The tape was not damaged. It simply stopped. For most of the late 20th century, personal audio recordings were common household objects. They were stored in kitchen drawers, hallway cabinets, or boxes labeled with dates and names. The recordings were rarely organized. Most families could not say how many existed or when they were last played. On December 24th, recordings followed a consistent purpose. They were made to account for absence. Someone was not home yet. Someone was expected to arrive. Someone wanted their voice to remain active until that arrival occurred. The duration of these recordings was usually short, between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. They contained routine information, traffic conditions, weather, interior lighting, whether food had been prepared or left warming. The first anomaly was not the content. It was the ending. Across multiple households in different cities, recordings labeled December 24th ended at the same point in the same way. The voice stopped mid-thought. Not during a sentence, not after a farewell, but immediately after acknowledging proximity. Examples follow. At 11:42 p.m., a man recorded a message from inside his vehicle. The sound of the engine was constant. The vehicle was not idling. Speed was estimated below 30 kilometers per hour. The man referenced streetlights. He mentioned snow accumulating along the curb. He paused twice to let other vehicles pass. At 11:44 p.m., he stated, "I'm pulling up now." The recording stopped. There was no sound of a parking brake, no door, no footsteps on pavement. The tape ended while the engine sound was still present. At 11:51 p.m., a woman recorded a message from her apartment kitchen. Ambient noise indicated a refrigerator cycling. A wall clock ticked at a consistent interval. She described the placement of gifts. She confirmed the front door was locked. She paused to listen for movement in the hallway. At 11:53 p.m., she said, "I hear them outside." The recording stopped. No footsteps followed. No voices entered the frame. The clock continued ticking until the tape ended. These endings were consistent, not identical, but structurally aligned. In each instance, the speaker referenced arrival, proximity, or presence outside the recorded space. In no instance did the recording proceed past entry. In several homes, these recordings were replayed annually. The audio quality did not degrade. Magnetic strength remained within tolerance. The silence at the end, however, became more pronounced with each playback. At least one family attempted replication. They stood in the same hallway, at the same time. On December 24th, they initiated a recording and waited. No voice was captured. Only the ambient sounds of a building settling for the night. The final confirmed example was recorded at 11:58 p.m. A young man stood directly in front of his front door. Keys were audible. Wind pressure indicated an exterior environment. He confirmed the porch light was on. At 11:59 p.m., he said, "I'm here." The tape stopped. No latch engaged. No interior sound followed. After that year, the practice ceased. Not through instruction, not through warning. It simply ended. To date, no recording labeled December 24th has ever documented entry. On Christmas Eve, people expect houses to empty. Lights turn off. Windows go dark. This recording exists because one house did not empty. One light stayed on when no one was supposed to be inside. The building stood at the end of the street, 4 floors, a narrow central stairwell, the kind of place that blends into the background once people leave for the holidays. By early evening on December 24th, most residents had already left. Cars pulled away, luggage was loaded, doors closed and were not reopened. By nightfall, the building was unoccupied. This was later confirmed through access records. From across the street, the building appeared dark, except for one window. It was on the 3rd floor. The light was steady, bright, unchanging. The curtains were open. The room beyond the glass looked empty. No silhouettes, no motion. Just light in a building no one had returned to. The apartment belonged to a tenant who had planned to leave town. He had told neighbors he would be gone before sunset. His car was not in its usual place. At approximately 10 p.m., a passerby noticed the light and slowed down. They did not stop. They did not enter the building. They simply looked up and continued on. The light did not change. Later, another passerby reported sound. Not voices, not footsteps. Something between them. A shift of weight. A presence moving within the stairwell. No door opened. No door closed. From the outside, the window remained the same. At some point, the interior appeared different. This was noticed from the sidewalk, through the glass. Furniture had appeared. A table, 2 chairs, one pulled back. No one could recall seeing them earlier. No one could explain how they arrived. Later still, voices were reported. Not loud enough to be heard inside the building, only audible through the stairwell near the entrance. They sounded calm, occupied, as if conversation was already in progress. Shortly before midnight, the light went out. Long enough for the street to go completely dark. Then the light returned. The room was no longer empty. Several shapes were visible. They did not move. They did not approach the window. They stood where people stand when a place belongs to them. At midnight, every other window on the street was dark. Only that one remained lit. By morning, the light was gone. The apartment was empty again. No table, no chairs. No indication that anyone had been inside. The tenant never returned. The apartment was rented again and again. Each lease included the same clause. No overnight stays on December 24th. After midnight, television is meant to be empty. Not silent, empty. No programming, no voices, no one on the other side of the screen. This recording exists because that emptiness did not hold. The television was left on deliberately. The volume was low enough to blend with the room. The lights were off. The screen was the only source of illumination. There was only one person in the apartment. No guests, no music, no movement beyond the occasional shift of weight. When scheduled programming ended, the image collapsed into static. White noise. No signal. This was expected. The static remained. At first, it was uniform, flat, easy to ignore. The kind of sound that becomes part of the air. Then it began to organize itself. Not into images, into rhythm. The noise rose and fell in patterns that felt deliberate, too measured to be random. A voice emerged briefly. Not clearly, not fully, only fragments. A greeting, the kind used at the beginning of holiday broadcasts. It did not address the viewer. It spoke as if continuing something already in progress. The static swallowed it again. Later, the voice returned. This time it named places. Not many. Only the one outside the window. The static shifted again. Music appeared beneath it. Soft, familiar, distorted. Not a song. An interlude. The kind meant to fill space while people prepare to speak. Another voice joined the first. They did not speak to each other. They overlapped, like multiple microphones left open in the same room. At some point, a name was spoken. It belonged to the person sitting in the dark. Nothing else changed. The volume stayed the same. The temperature stayed the same. Only the static tightened around the sound. The voices continued. They referenced moments that had not been shared, details that had never been spoken aloud. Then, for a fraction of a second, the static cleared. An image appeared. A studio. Empty chairs. Microphones positioned at standing height. Waiting. The image disappeared immediately. The voices stopped soon after. The static remained. The television did not turn itself off. When the screen was finally powered down, the room did not return to normal. The silence felt structured, as if something had been paused, not ended. In the days that followed, the television functioned without issue. No recordings could be recovered. No errors detected. But after that night, no one in the apartment left a screen on past midnight. Not out of fear, out of certainty. Whatever was speaking did not need time to finish. Morning came. The night ended everywhere except one room. This recording exists to explain what did not return with the light. The phone rang shortly after sunrise. Not an alarm, not a notification. A call. The number was local, familiar, ordinary. It was answered without hesitation. No greeting followed, only breathing. Calm, patient, as if the caller had expected the line to be open. When the voice spoke, it did not ask a question. It stated a fact. "You left something on last night." The response was immediate denial. Everything had been turned off. Lights, television, decorations. The voice did not argue. It stayed on after you went to sleep. The caller described the living room precisely. The tree by the window, the television facing the couch, the extension cord behind the cabinet. Details that had never been mentioned to anyone. The call ended without warning. No goodbye, no explanation. Attempts to call back failed. The number no longer existed. Later that morning, the living room was checked. Everything appeared normal. No damage, no disorder. Except for the television. It was unplugged. The cord lay on the floor, warm, as if it had been removed recently. There was no timer, no remote access, no explanation. That night, the television was not used. The following night, it was removed from the room entirely. Still, the calls continued, always in the morning, always brief, always polite. Each call referenced something that had been left on. A sound, a screen, a presence. The caller never asked for anything. They only confirmed continuation. Eventually, the phone was turned off at night. The calls stopped being heard. Morning arrived. The night adjusted. This case is now closed. Not because everything was explained, but because nothing else followed. What you heard did not repeat. It didn't need to. Some nights don't return. They remain adjusted.